let's talk about tire size. One of the biggest questions, pun intended, that we get at OWL is, what's the biggest tire I can fit on my rig? And many of you may not even know why people want to do that. Why do you want a bigger tire for off-roading? Well, it all comes down to one simple thing. It's not just aesthetics. It's ground clearance. It's getting your vehicle up. Tire size is the only reasonable way to get your vehicle higher off the ground. You can get lifts, but that doesn't lift things like your axles, your differentials, and other parts of the vehicle. And so people want to get bigger tires because it allows you to get critical items higher off the trail. But there are some drawbacks to bigger tires. When you go bigger on the tire, you have to make sure that you have enough clearance. So in this video, I'm going to show you a few different tires, talk about tire sizes, why they make absolutely no sense, and whoever invented tire sizes is a complete moron. And then also what you need to do to your Sprinter or Ford Transit or ProMaster to fit larger tires. So let's start by looking at some of the tires that we have in front of us size-wise. This right here came off a dually, which is right behind the camera. You can see size-wise, it's definitely smaller than that. It's kind of more akin to the 245. This is a high mileage road tire. It's going to be really quiet and it's going to last a long time on the freeway, and it's going to be absolute garbage off-road. This is a 245. So this is what is going to come standard on something like a Revel or a GH1. Any of those kind of off-the-shelf builds from the major manufacturers typically come with a 245. The 245 is a nice compromise on these vehicles because you don't have to do any cutting. They still look better than the factory high mileage. They are an all-terrain. Next size up that's really popular, I believe this is a 265 I have in front of me. This is a 265, and then jumping all the way up to this. Of course, I have to take everything to a stupid level of extreme, so this is a 315, also known as a 35. So there's a lot of numbers flying around. So let's start with the numbers. What does that mean? A 35, a 275, a 265? Well, now we're going to get into why whoever named or whoever decided how we calculate the size of tires is a moron. Usually the metric system makes a lot more sense, but for tires it doesn't. When it comes to an American tire, what they would do is they would say this is a 35 by 12 and a half. Really easy. 35 is basically the diameter. 12 and a half would be the width. Really simple to understand.
For European sizes, it's so screwed up we had to come to the lab. And you know it's a lab because it says it, lab. And I have this very official looking coat from not Amazon. Anyway. We are here in the lab to dissect European tire numbers, and it won't be pretty. Okay, so you've got a tire. Let's say it's 265 by 70, R17. Okay, this, easy, radial. I feel like I should be speaking with an accent when we are talking about the tires, but I'm not going to. It just feels like all scientists talk like that. Now that we have the numbers up here, let's talk about what they mean. 265, this is millimeters. And of course, here in the US, we use the system of inches, which makes no sense. Millimeters makes more, but it makes even less sense in this scenario. So with a European tire, you have got the 265 in millimeters, which is the width of the tire. So we have got the width of the tire. This is a tire, and you have got 265 millimeters, and then you have the sidewall, which is this. Now that 70 is an aspect, it's a portion of the width of the tire. So this represents 70% of that 265. So the actual, if I were to draw a tire here, what you've got is this part is 265. This part is 70% of 265. I'm going to use a calculator to figure out what that is now. So 265 times 0.7 equals, this equals 185 millimeters. Now the rim in the middle, or wheel, is 17 inches. So you have to convert that to millimeters. So you go 17 times 25 is 480 millimeters. And then you've got more sidewall here, which is another 185 millimeters. So now you've got this done. So now you've got 185 mm plus 425 mm plus 185 mm. So you are at 795 millimeters, which then needs to be divided by 25 to get you inches. And you arrive at roughly a 32-inch tire. So, given everything we've gone through here, wouldn't it have just been easier for them to say, it's a 32-inch tire? I don't get it. It's kind of like the rest of the standard system we use here, but this is why we had to come to the lab, because that's not a tire size, that's an equation.
So then the last number here is 17, so R17. 17 is the rim diameter, so the size of the wheel. If we go over to this one, this is an Owl Mojo. We only make wheels in 17. There are a lot of vehicles that come with 20s. When I was a kid, 17s were big. They were only on sports cars. Off-roaders predominantly use 16-inch wheels. Then 17s became in vogue, and that's what everybody uses today. And you've also got tires like 20s and 22s, and if you go buy a new SUV, it's probably going to come on 20s or even 22s because it looks better. Well, truth be told, if you're going to be off-roading, that is a stupid thing to do. And I don't mean to insult anyone. It might look good, and if you're choosing aesthetics over function, more power to you. But if you want a tire that functions off-road, you're going to want to go with the 17. So when people talk about how big a tire can I go, it's really not a simple answer to the question. It can be how big without cutting, or how big if I have a Sawzall and I could care less about any part of my van. Now, some people take it to the extreme. I've seen as big as 37s on the previous gen Sprinter, but on this Sprinter, you can pretty much go up to 315s, but you're gonna have what's called rubbing. And rubbing is where part of the tire actually hits part of the van, whether it's plastic bodywork or in this case, metal. And mostly that can be addressed for 315s, and you may only get a little bit of rubbing at full turn angle. And so let's go through what's involved with the different tires. This is a stock van as far as this part, and there are replacement parts for this. You can either cut this yourself, but now there are off-the-shelf replacements that come in plastic that can replace this entire part, which is actually fairly easy to replace, and it allows you to have this come kind of all the way back to where this fiberglass fender is, and that allows you more space for the tire, because remember, the tire is not sitting perfectly in this wheel well. The tire really sits down here. So for something like a 35, first and foremost, you're going to need to either cut this part, or you're going to need to put on a replacement like a Mondo kit or similar product. And then what's going to need to happen is up front, you're going to need to do some trimming. This is an inexpensive piece of plastic. It's an inner fender liner, and the purpose that it solves is, one, just making this whole area look a little bit cleaner. Two, it's kind of protecting all these cables and wires from getting hit by rocks, debris, and anything else you might encounter on the road or trail. So you want to do your best to keep the plastic covering all of the essential bits and trim away what you don't need. Now, once you get up into the 315s, you do have to trim a lot, and on this side of the van right here is your DEF tank. And unfortunately, we have for a long time wanted to relocate the DEF tank, make it aluminum, relocate it in the engine bay so you can run bigger tires, but the government will not let us touch it. Even if you put the same size DEF tank in, they consider that altering the emissions, and so we're not legally allowed to do anything to the DEF tank. So remember that that's there, and there's some wires right below it, so you want to do your best to protect that when you trim out any fender liner. We're over here at our Owl-built Revel, and it's got a number of modifications, and these are 285 75 17. Now, this tire does require cutting to fit with this, and so you can see, well, I don't have it out of the vehicle, but this inner fender liner has been trimmed because we've got a full Falcon suspension on it. So we've trimmed around the suspension to make sure that you can access all of the clickers to adjust your suspension settings. And then back here, you can see how this part is not body color. In fact, we're going to end up painting all this down here dark black. But if we didn't put on a Mondo kit, this radius would continue down right here, and it would actually it wouldn't hit the tire when the tire is straight, but it's when you turn, because this area would rotate and it would hit that and go bop, 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 bop. It'd be super annoying, and it's something that you wouldn't want to live with all the time. So the Mondo kit here allows for a bigger tire on the front of the vehicle. One of the things to keep in mind is as you increase your tire size, going from say a 31 to a 33, it's 2 inches larger, but you're not actually gaining 2 inches of additional ground clearance. Remember, your tire is going to have half of that additional gain above it, so you're actually gaining 1 inch of ground clearance. So if you were to go from a 31 to a 35, you'd gain 2 additional inches of ground clearance, which is actually pretty substantial, because you have to imagine if your differential is here and you gain 2 inches, now your differential is here. Add some Owl Pro skid plates and you're ready for any off-road adventure. The last aspect of tire size that I want to talk about is a dually super single. So this is our Teton that started life as a Winnebago Echo on a 3500 chassis, which means it was a dually. And a dually means it has 2 rear wheels. Why do duallies exist? Well, they have larger payload capacity because you're distributing the rear weight over more tires. The reason I don't think that's as much of a critical item anymore is because tire technology has gotten massively better since duallies were invented. So a lot of times, in my opinion, duallies are fairly antiquated and they don't perform well off-road. We'll talk about why they don't perform well off-road when we get over there, but you're also very limited on tire size, and that's because you get too big, the tires run into each other, and you have to start putting spacers between the tires, and it starts becoming kind of a mess. And so the solution to that is a super single, and we replace the entire wheel, we replace both dually wheels with a single wheel, and that allows you to go up to a 315/70/17. That means this is a full 35-inch tire on this Teton, which looks great because of the sheer mass of this vehicle. It is not small, and it needs big tires to look right. But also when you're off-roading, because it's a 35, you've got a lot of sidewall. And again, we're going to talk about contact patch, but it also affects ride. If you didn't know it, tires are the very first aspect of your suspension. Think about it. When you go over a bump, the first thing to hit it is the tire. And the reason tires are still filled with air is because they deform when they hit a bump, which means they are acting as part of your suspension. Increase the sidewall, it softens up the suspension. So when you're going on those washboard roads, going to a larger tire with slightly less air is actually going to give you a smoother ride than having 4 duallies with lower sidewalls. And so if you're looking for a more comfortable ride, sometimes bigger tires have many advantages. Now it may look like I'm just taking a siesta, but really I wanted to get down by this dually setup, and you can clearly see 1, 2, even I can count that high. And what you notice is the distance between them. Now out here at the tread, there's a decent amount of space, but if you really get in there, there's only about an inch of space as you get closer to the rim. And that inch of space can be problematic because what you've got is essentially a funnel. And when you're going off-road, a rock can get in there. And one of the things about tires is that punctures on the outer tread are typically repairable. Punctures on the sidewall are usually game over. Now there's some new products that have come out that can patch sidewalls on the trail, but if you're running a dually setup off-road, you are going to be constantly stopping and using a sledgehammer to bash rocks out from between your 2 tires. It's a pain. You're going to have a lot more flats, and you've also got twice as many tires in the back to air down. So for me, dually setups are perfectly fine for the street, but if you run your tires down, I would switch to a super single. Hopefully that arms you with enough data to be able to pick out the perfect tires for your rig, depending on how you're using it, how you're driving it, conditions in which you're going to be using it, whether it's on-road, off-road, and how hardcore you're going to be going off-road, and whether you need that ground clearance, etc. So choosing the right size tire is an important decision on your vehicle from function and aesthetics. The other aspect I want to talk about is tread. So in this next video, I've got all these tires lined up, and they all have different treads, and we're going to teach you the difference between, say, a rock crawler and a rain tire.